I suspected that my wife had been cheating on me recently. She resisted when I hugged her, objected when I kissed her, and even looked like she was bullied during a fight. I was wondering if she wanted a divorce when I unexpectedly saw her post history. Girls, I woke up and traveled back to 10 years earlier. My crush is my husband. What should I do now? I was speechless and asked, "I'm back." I raised my eyes to look at the woman standing in the entrance. Her long hair was messy and her clothes were untidy. The strap of the bag she was carrying was broken in half and hung crookedly on her elbow. Even her usually delicate makeup was a little smudged at this time. She didn't look like she had just finished a business trip, but rather like she had just had a fight with someone. I stood up in shock and asked, "Did someone bully you? Why do you look like this?" Jessica didn't answer, but just shook her head. She looked at me quietly and kept looking at me. I couldn't help but walked up to her, hugged her, and pulled her shoulders inward, complaining, "How come you don't recognize your husband after not seeing him for a few days?" Jessica was pulled by me for a distance before she answered hesitantly, "I know him." I turned around unconsciously. Her eyes were still fixed on me. After I gathered my strength and got ready, it was she who took the initiative to reject me. What kind of person is this? I thought angrily, "Forget it. Just go to sleep." Suddenly, I heard a noise beside my ear. The door of the study was gently opened by Jessica. She glanced at me secretly and then slipped into my and her bedroom like a thief. I raised my eyebrows. Even though I was still dissatisfied with her in my heart, I followed her. Coincidentally, just a second before I entered the bedroom, Jessica flashed into the bathroom of the bedroom. The sound of water was heard in the bathroom. She was taking a shower, but I still felt that she was avoiding me. I resigned myself to my fate and went forward to turn the doorknob of the bathroom, but I couldn't open it. The door was actually locked. Now I was sure that Jessica was avoiding me. After all, she never locked the door. Even when she was taking a bath in the bathtub, she would ask me with a seductive look, "Husband, don't you really want to take a bath with me?" I stood outside the bathroom door and thought, did I go too far just now? But these behaviors were nothing compared to what Jessica had done to me in the past. Every time she pestered me, kissed me, and hugged me. Every time she was crazy and squeezed me. How could I today she started to dislike me? I was furious and secretly thought that I would have to ask Jessica to beg for mercy when she came out. As a result, I waited for an hour. I was speechless. Jessica, who came out of the bathroom, was no longer shy and called me naturally, "Hubby." I frowned and said nothing and turned my back. She quickly came over and said coquettishly in a soft voice, "Look at me, hubby. I just didn't react just now. You know, we haven't seen each other for several days. I miss you so much." She buried her head in my neck and rubbed it gently. I looked at her and saw that her eyes were bright, and she looked at me like a kitten. I was a little dazed for a moment. Jessica would not look at me like this in the past. It's not that she had no feelings for me in the past, but more of a charming desire, not like now, when her eyes are still filled with the clear love of a young girl. My hand unconsciously touched her cheek, and I asked, "What's wrong with you?" She said, "Nothing." She snuggled in my arms and rubbed it gently. I said, "I just feel so happy." She seemed to sigh and murmur. She said, "You are actually my husband. I am so happy." I was speechless. We've been married for almost 2 years. "Isn't it too late for you to say this now?" She said, "No, it's never too late to say these words." Seeing how cute she is, I can't help but press my lips against hers. I pressed my lips against hers for a full 10 seconds, but she didn't move. I frowned and looked at her. Jessica had a look of surprise on her face, as if she couldn't believe what was happening. Her face was full of the entanglement of wanting to kiss, but not daring to. I pressed my lips against hers and asked vaguely, "Don't you want to kiss?" She said, "I will kiss you," in between her words. Jessica's lips were sucking on my lips unconsciously. She suddenly became very passionate and started to kiss carefully. I savored for a while, but still felt something was wrong. How could this person not even breathe, as if it was our first kiss? But seeing how excited she was, I didn't have a heart to interrupt her. Never mind. There's also the taste of inexperience, but earnest. I magnanimously ignored everything about Jessica. She was abnormal, but she was still very abnormal. The most abnormal thing was that she was no longer proactive. It was really strange. After all, she had always been very proactive and enthusiastic after marriage. Suddenly, I was not used to her becoming aloof. We were lying in the same bed. I got close to her. She was breathing rapidly, but she didn't respond to me. I hugged her tightly. Her body was hot, but she didn't respond to me. She seemed to have suddenly turned into a nun, without desires or requests, as if she was saving herself for someone else. The sudden change of marriage made me feel depressed. I called my brother Victor out for a drink. I didn't talk about Jessica the whole time, but he still noticed it. He smiled and teased, "Why didn't Jessica call you today?" Whenever she went out, she was always followed by calls and text messages. "What happened today? Did you have a quarrel?" I said angrily, "She doesn't like me anymore." Victor smiled and said, "Don't talk nonsense. Anyone with discerning eye can see that Jessica loves you to death." I simply told him all the abnormalities of Jessica during this period. I asked, "Under what circumstances do you think she would be like this?" I took a sip of wine angrily and said, "She almost wants to sleep in a separate room from me now." My brother advised me, "It shouldn't be that serious." Was she stimulated by something? I subconsciously thought that Jessica was stimulated by something psychologically, but the actual situation told me that she was mentally healthy. She is full of energy every day, but she just resists me touching her. My brother said, "Didn't she go to a foreign country this time? I heard it's quite chaotic there. Could something have happened to her that she didn't dare to tell you?" My brother said, "She is afraid that you will worry. This is normal. And didn't you say that she delayed her return home for 2 days? What if it was delayed because of her injury? If she was injured, this can also explain why Jessica was hiding from you." He asserted, "I think that's the case." As I listened to my brother's comforting words, I wanted more and more to go home and check Jessica. If there was really a problem, I would take her to the hospital immediately. It was past 11 o'clock when I got home. I opened the door. Jessica, who was sitting on the sofa, came over eagerly and frowned the next moment. She asked, "Have you drunk?" I couldn't help but wonder, "If you were so worried, why didn't you call me?" I pushed away her hand that was holding me, but she stubbornly dragged me. After helping me to the sofa, she poured me a glass of honey water. I looked at her intently and said, "You're hurt." She shook her head and replied softly, "No, I frowned." "Then show me." Her face flushed instantly. She lifted the hem of her pajamas a little with her fingers, hesitated several times, then let it fall back down. I stared at her and asked, "You don't want to see your body now?" Biting her lip, she slowly took off her top. Her body was flawless. No trace of the injury her brother had mentioned. My gaze hardened. "Take off the skirt too," I said. She remained silent. "Take it off," I repeated firmly. Only then did she shyly remove her skirt. I looked at Jessica, who stood before me with a red face, and I couldn't hold back anymore. I pushed her down on the sofa, held her shoulders, and asked, "Jessica, what's going on with you?" She seemed startled and murmured, I'm fine." I frowned. "If you're really fine, then I'll continue." I looked into her panicked eyes and added suggestively, "Let me give you a full check." Jessica looked up at me, lips pursed. I thought she would pull away again, but the next second, she wrapped her arms around my neck and kissed me. Turns out, there's no such thing as a cold woman, just a man too tired to keep up. I didn't expect her to be so passionate that night, leaving me completely worn out instead. What surprised me most was how she changed, from awkward and shy to bold and eager. Back then, I was too tired to think much about it. But the next morning, lying in bed with an aching back, all those oddities started to click. Jessica didn't act like a woman who had been married for 2 years. Instead, she resembled a naive girl who had just come of age, clumsy and inexperienced. It was strange. Could someone just forget everything overnight? I thought about it over and over, but couldn't find an answer. Just then, the woman I'd been wondering about pushed open the door. She was in light homewear, as if fresh from a shower. Her long, Damp hair hung over her shoulders. She looked casual, but something about her carried an innocent charm. I stared at her, feeling both familiarity and strangeness. Jessica sat by the bed with a tray of porridge. Her voice was gentle. Hungry? Eat something first. Then we can have the main course later. I smiled. Feed me. My arms are too sore. Her ears turned red, but she still picked up the spoon and brought it to my lips. The porridge was at a perfect temperature, but completely unsweetened. I narrowed my eyes at her. Jessica had always been thoughtful. She would never forget something like adding sugar. My doubts grew. I took a few bites of the tasteless porridge, still staring at her flushed ears. Why are you blushing? I asked. Jessica lowered her head and whispered, My zipper isn't closed. I glanced at her, speechless. We've been married for years. Is it really that embarrassing? She blinked nervously. That only deepened my suspicion. What's going on with you? I asked. You don't let me kiss you or touch you. Now you're acting like a different person. Are you even my wife? I am, she said quietly. I'm your wife. Then why are you stammering? Jessica paused, then suddenly leaned in and kissed me, as if to silence me. But I wasn't going to let her off that easily. I pushed her away and said coldly, Explain it first. She lowered her eyes. Something happened recently, and I don't know how to handle it yet. Can you give me a bit more time? I'll sort it out soon. She rarely looked so lost. It reminded me of how exhausted and worn she seemed after returning from that last business trip. I frowned. Do you need help with work? She shook her head. No, just some issues at work. I'm sorry. I've been in a bad mood lately. She looked at me apologetically, and suddenly all my suspicions vanished. It made sense for her to act strangely if she wasn't feeling well. But then Victor asked me, after a client meeting, So you're just going to let it go? Jonathan, isn't that too easy? I stirred the coffee in my cup and replied casually, What else can I do? Hire a private investigator. Has Jessica been acting strange lately? He asked. I thought for a moment. I wouldn't say strange, just different. Sometimes it feels like she's pretending to be close to me, like she's not really herself. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. Victor shrugged. Try to stay positive. Come on, cheers. Just then, Jessica's assistant walked in with afternoon tea. Her timing was a bit too convenient. As she approached and greeted me, I asked, Busy at work lately? Not really, Mr. G, she said. Any major problems recently? She thought for a second. Everything's under control, as far as I know. I smiled and stood up. Good. I'll head to the office with you. On the way there, doubts circled in my mind. Jessica had lied. If she wasn't having trouble at work, then why all the strange behavior? I didn't want to think the worst, but everything pointed in one direction. Was she seeing someone else? I brought afternoon tea to her office. Her co-workers were thrilled. She's in a meeting, they told me. I sat at her desk and waited. Her phone, tablet, and computer were all there. Normally, I wouldn't snoop. We'd always trusted each other. She never checked my phone, and I'd never touched hers. But now I needed to know. Without hesitation, I picked up her phone. Messages, call logs, photo albums, nothing unusual. Then I grabbed the tablet. I unlocked it with my birthday. What popped up wasn't the home screen. It was still on the page she last viewed. It seemed she'd turned off the screen mid-browsing. It was a post on a forum. The title read, I woke up 10 years in future. My crush is now my husband. What do I do? I raised an eyebrow and started reading. The poster wrote, I'm a high school senior who just finished a college entrance exam. The day before yesterday, I had woken up from a nap at home, only to find myself in an unfamiliar city. The boy I liked even called me his wife. I wondered why Jessica would be browsing such a boring post, until my sharp eyes caught sight of the username. Jonathan, my husband. I stared at it in shock, because my name is Jonathan. For some reason, my heart skipped a beat. With trembling fingers, I clicked on the user's avatar and opened their homepage. When I saw the big words Edit Profile, I fell completely silent. This was Jessica's account. In other words, the one who posted it was Jessica herself. Damn. No words could describe the shock I felt in that moment. My brain almost shut down, leaving only my eyes functioning, mechanically scanning the text in front of me. It read, I went home and saw him. He was so gentle and considerate toward me. It seems we have a great relationship. I never imagined I'd be this happy in the future. He seemed to notice something strange about me. Did I act too weird? I was scared he'd hate me because of it. I wish I hadn't time traveled. He thinks I'm acting strange, but I don't want to give up. I'm just so happy to be with him. Even though this happiness feels like it was stolen, I've decided to stay and live as his wife. That's the end of this post. Thank you, everyone. After reading all the updates, my finger slid down to the comment section. Someone commented, your biggest task right now is to stop reading time travel novels. What kind of daytime delusion is this? Another said, I just finished a college entrance exam and this is wild. I wake up and I'm in a dream? Is this a new tutorial for starting an account? Is there a more dignified way? Someone else chimed in, girl, there's a way. First, divorce your dream guy, then wait for the original soul in your body to awaken. After that, you can time travel naturally. That's how it usually works in novels. By the way, how exactly did you time travel? I also just finished the entrance exam and want to marry my crush. The early comments were all mocking or skeptical until Jessica began posting serious updates. Gradually, the tone of the comments began to shift. Someone wrote, even if he's your husband now, you're not really his wife yet. You must stay true to yourself. Don't become the mistress of your future husband. Another said, wait, weren't you talking about wanting to time travel just a few days ago? What happened in just 3 days and 2 nights? Someone else joked, why is everyone in the comment section so in sync? Are we all just going along with her role play? Ha ha ha, but what if it's real? The comment section was endless, and even after scrolling for a long time, I hadn't reached the bottom. My fingers started to ache, but my mind was becoming clearer. I started to understand. Jessica had time travel from the past. That explained her strange and abnormal behavior. It made sense now. She had just finished college entrance exam. She was only 18. She had suddenly woken up in a life where she had been married for nearly 2 years. Her reaction was perfectly reasonable. She was still a pure and innocent girl, barely an adult. Thinking back to Jessica's awkward behavior in the past few days, I couldn't help but laugh. I accepted the truth without much resistance. The fact that Jessica is currently 18 years old is far easier to accept than if she had cheated on me. Just as I was about to turn off the tablet, I caught a glimpse of something I had overlooked before. Jessica had described me as the boy she liked. I had always assumed we were a loving couple, so I hadn't thought much about her behavior at first. But the key is, she's only 18 now. In the past, Jessica and I were in love. I had pursued her for a long time before she finally agreed to be with me. She had always been distant and reserved, never swayed by sweet talk. Thinking back to how hard I worked to win her heart, I silently cursed. What a joke. Jessica and I had met at a friend's party. I had just returned from abroad, where I was used to seeing blonde, blue-eyed girls. Then I saw Jessica, a sweet and elegant Chinese beauty. I was stunned. I couldn't say I liked her right away, but I definitely wanted to get to know her. So I took the initiative to sit beside her and asked, "Can I add your contact info?" I still remember. She was wearing a misty blue dress that matched her temperament perfectly. She adjusted her sleeves gracefully, revealing her fair, delicate arms. My eyes were practically glued to her, but her cold reply killed my enthusiasm. She said, "No." I didn't want to push, so I let it go. The second time we met was at another birthday party. Jessica was in a tight black dress that showed off her figure. She greeted everyone with a cold, distant air, but she still captivated me. Determined not to make the same mistake, I got her contact info through a game of truth or dare. At first, I had no intention of pursuing her. I just wanted to be closer. But Jessica wasn't chatty. One day, she asked directly, "Why do you talk to me every day? Is there something you want?" I replied weakly, "I just want to talk." She asked why. I forced myself to say, "Because I like you. Can I pursue you?" She was silent for a long time before replying, "I'm not easy to win over." That wasn't a rejection. It lit a fire in me. I was full of confidence and determination. I chased Jessica for over a year before she finally agreed to date me. After almost 2 years together, I proposed. We were happily married. The coldness I once saw in her eyes had long vanished, and for a while, I was proud of that. But now, I realized she had already liked me since she was 18. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by a mix of frustration and indignation at being played. Yet, beneath that, there was a strange competitiveness rising within me. I wanted to settle this with Jessica. Just then, the door opened. Jessica walked in. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Why are you here?" she asked. "I missed you," I replied, suppressing my emotions. She walked over quickly, but froze when she saw the phone and tablet next to me. I explained, "I just want to play a game on the tablet, but I forgot the password." "It's your birthday," she said. She sat down next to me and calmly pushed the tablet away. I pulled her into my arms, watching her face closely. The 18-year-old Jessica clearly wasn't as composed as her future self. There was still some panic in her eyes. Maybe now was my only chance to tease her. I looked at her and said, "You've been acting strange lately. I almost thought you were cheating on me." "What? What's strange?" she asked, nervous. "Everything's strange," I replied. "You're not as affectionate as you used to be." She hesitated. What was I like before? I raised a brow. "Are you seriously asking me that?" She paused for a moment and whispered, "I know. I've been in a bad mood lately. I won't be like this again." I didn't know what Jessica had gone through, but she was exactly the same as she had been in the past few days. If it weren't for the clear panic in her eyes, I would have thought that the pretending girl was back. But the result was obviously not the case. After all, she is easy to deceive now. When she got home, I handed her the newly arrived apron and said, "It's time to cook." The style of the apron was actually quite interesting. Jessica took it and frowned but didn't say anything. Seeing that she was about to put over her skirt, I reminded her, "The kind that only wears the apron." Her face turned red instantly, and the apron seemed to become hot. She neither pinched it nor let it go, nor was she silent for a long time, then said softly, "Do you really want to do this?" I said confidently, "Really? You promised me before, but in fact, you didn't. After all, the old Jessica wanted to save face, but now she's so innocent that she wants to deceive me." I just fooled her a little, and she agreed. She lowered her head and said helplessly, "Do you really want to eat?" I said, "Let's eat first." I deliberately kept a secret and said, "I can't say what we'll have after dinner." She pursed her lips resignedly. Her whole face flushed, and she began to change clothes in front of me. The dinner that day was particularly sumptuous, so I bought a lot of things I wanted to try before, but didn't dare to. Jessica was almost played by me. She was shy and bold, and I became more and more satisfied. The tricks I used on her became more and more frequent. Accidents always happen when people's psychology is the most inflated. When Jessica was swaying in front of me in her battle robe, I couldn't help but rush forward and pounce on her, saying, "It's just right, my wife." She blinked and said, "Do you like it, husband?" "Yes, I do." I nodded hurriedly and said, "I like it very much, as long as you like it." She rubbed my forehead obediently. This look was really seductive. I couldn't help but sigh, "You're much more obedient now than before." She trembled, obviously, realizing that what I just blurted out was something. I was also a little stunned and was about to pretend nothing happened when Jessica asked with an indignant look on her face, "What do you mean now? What do you mean before?" I said vaguely, "It means literally," but at this moment, she was particularly sharp and was not affected by me at all. She asked directly, "You know?" I kept silent. She stared at me for a few seconds and said firmly, "You know?" She stared at me and said word by word, "I should have guessed that you found out about me." At this moment, Jessica made me feel a little uneasy for some reason. I pretended to be calm and said, "So what have you found out?" You made so many mistakes that I shouldn't have found out. She asked, when did you find out? Without waiting for my answer, she guessed, the day you went to my office. She said, it seems that from that day on, you always made excessive demands on me. I coughed lightly to indicate that the answer was correct. She tucked her hair behind her ears to sort out her thoughts. She said, so you found out about me and asked me to play with you like this. I said, what else? I gritted my teeth and said, who made you treat me like that before? She said with an innocent expression, how did I treat you before? Since she really didn't know, I said, you've always liked me, right? But when I was pursuing you, why did you always look so superior and indifferent? After hearing this, Jessica actually raised her eyebrows in pleasure. Seeing her expression, I was very angry. I gritted my teeth and said, how can you be so good at playing tricks on me? You obviously like me, but you pretend not to care. I scolded her. You must have been so happy when I asked you for my contact information. You should have been happy, she said, but I refused. I was speechless. I took a deep breath and asked patiently, why are you so sure that you would refuse? She snorted and said, you won't cherish something that is too easy to get. I couldn't help but argue. How could I? She rolled her eyes and said, do you remember your ex-girlfriend in high school? You pursued her for a day. Or maybe it's not called pursuing. You just told her that you liked her, and the next day she agreed to be with you. After a pause, she said, you were in love for a week in total, and you broke up because you were tired of it. I was speechless. This is really a long time ago for me. I couldn't help but say, why do you still mention it after so long? She said, but for me, it happened not long ago. This incident left such a deep impression on me that I kept telling myself that if there was a day when you were interested in me, I would make this time longer and longer until you would never forget me in your life. I said helplessly, are you satisfied now? She kissed me on the corner of my mouth with satisfaction and said, it seems I did a good job. I sighed and saw her sitting up and starting to touch up her makeup. I couldn't help but pinch her face and said, since we've already talked about it, let's talk about it again. She asked, what did you say? I said, for example, the fact that you like me. Jessica's cheeks turned red, and she said shyly, what's there to talk about? I replied, I want to know. She still didn't say anything. I sniffed, and a plan came to my mind. I said, in fact, I didn't dare to tell you that I was getting married to you. I have been very inferior in the past 2 years. She asked, are you inferior? I said frankly, yes, I have paid so much for this relationship. I hugged her in my arms and deliberately said, you don't know how worried I am that you will run away with someone else. You are so beautiful, and there are so many people who like you. I am really uneasy. You have never told me that you like me. Jessica calmly distanced herself from me and said, you told me yesterday that after marriage, I would say I love you every day. I was speechless. Damn, she is 18 years old now, and it's not easy to fool her. I stared at her, and she stared at me for a long time and said helplessly, there is nothing to say. There are so many people who like you. Is it strange that I am the only one? It's not strange, but she is the wife I've been pursuing for a year and a half. She can somehow see what I am thinking. She said, if I was easily pursued by you at the beginning, I would also be a passerby in your life. I was speechless. Jessica put on her makeup and put on her clothes again. The room became quiet. Neither of us spoke again. The atmosphere was inexplicably anxious. Jessica whispered, I will play the role of your wife in the future. I curled my lips and said, you are not her. She said, I wasn't mentally prepared before and always felt like I was taking someone else's position, but now I've thought it through. I am her. I will be your good wife in the future. I haven't thought about the 18-year-old Jessica's time travel these days, but now that it has come to this, I can't help but wonder. Do you feel regretful? She asked what. I said, if I can't travel back, it's equivalent to you losing 10 years of time. She said, no, as long as I spent all that time with you, it's good to be happy together. I smiled and said, we have only been together for 6 years. She said, I will miss you a lot in the remaining 4 years. This person is really good at talking. I held her head and leaned over to kiss her. When the kiss ended, she whispered, Do you think I kiss better now or before? Is she sick? I just want to say that this person is jealous of herself. I accepted Jessica's time travel well, but she didn't seem to believe it. She always asked me, Can you really accept me now? She asked me so many times that I got annoyed. I really wanted to yell in her ear, What if I don't accept it? I just think that she is definitely better than a wife who has changed her mind since she came here with a heart full of love. I can't file for divorce just because she suddenly became a few years younger. I might as well make the best of it. Anyway, Jessica is my wife, and this will never change. In comparison, I am more worried about her. After all, she is Jessica, who is several years younger. What should I do about the difficulties at work? Jessica told me with her actions that she is still so outstanding. I think it was because of the study in high school that I couldn't learn anything well with my energy. So I felt relieved, and the days went on as usual. Jessica gradually felt that she would not travel back in time. As she said, she began to play the role of my wife. Occasionally, I would have the illusion that she didn't travel back in time. After all, she now and she in the past overlapped infinitely in all aspects, except that she would pester me to talk about the past when I was in love with her. I said impatiently, What is there to talk about? It's just the old-fashioned routine that high-end hunters often appear in the form of prey. Jessica changed the way of asking, Then how did I seduce you? When I mentioned this, I had a lot to say. I counted on my fingers and began to list all the sins she had committed. I said, Once I asked you to watch the sunrise, but you didn't reply to my message, so I went to your room to find you. Do you know how you opened the door for me at that time? She said she was not wearing any clothes. I smiled. Jessica, who was a few years older, was indeed more skilled than she is now. I said hatefully, You were wearing a thin white suspender vest at that time. She came to open the door for me with red eyes and apologized in a wrong manner, saying, Sorry, I got up late. Thinking back to that scene, my heart is still trembling. I said, How could I have the heart to watch the sunrise at that time? I only wanted. She asked, What did I only want? I smiled and said, I can't tell you that. She said, What else? Jessica was obviously very curious about this topic. I said, There was also the time when we went hiking. Originally, we agreed to stay in a tent each, but in the middle of the night, you came by yourself with a sleeping bag and said you were cold. Jessica raised her eyebrows in surprise and said, I would be so proactive? Of course. She didn't do that. She just shouted briefly in the tent. I quickly asked her what happened. After learning that the tent was wet by water, I, with ill intentions, immediately persuaded her to sleep with me. In the middle of the night, she just shivered slightly and said vaguely that she was cold. I spontaneously got close to her. At that time, my heart was full of excitement to have close contact with her. Who would have thought that all this was planned by her? Jessica smiled with satisfaction. I glanced at her and continued to tell her routine. I don't know which one triggered the key to the problem. I saw the woman who was originally looking at me with her chin in her hand suddenly change her posture and said with a smile, I was so scheming at the beginning. I said, Yes, that's it. I was stunned and squinted my eyes at her. She came over and asked, How come you don't even recognize your own wife? I was so nervous that I swallowed my saliva. I said, You're back. She nodded and said, Yeah. I asked, What about you? She said, You went back? She said that in the parallel world. Thanks to her, I also experienced a feeling of returning to the age of 18. I nodded silently, but my heart was still in a trance. My husband should hand in his homework. She hooked her finger at me. I was inexplicably unhappy and said, Can you be more reserved? You are much more shy. She rolled her eyes and sat directly on my legs. She asked, Tell me, what have you done during this period? I asked, Then what did you do? She snorted and said, Preparing materials for studying abroad. I asked, Are you in the same school as me? She nodded and said in a rather concealed manner, Anyway, We are destined to be husband and wife. So why not get to know each other earlier? I smiled and said, Actually, it's because you want to seduce me earlier. Jessica was confused. I pinched her cheek and smiled. I already know that you have liked me for a long time. It was you who deliberately seduced me in the first place. She was only stunned for a moment and quickly regained her composure. She asked, What else do you know? I lied to her. I also know the reason why you like me. She shook her head and said, Impossible. I was stunned and asked why. She said, Because I plan to take this matter to the grave. I was even more confused and asked, Why? She said that this way, You will be curious about me for the rest of your life. She is really scheming. I was speechless. Let's not play any more. She said in a good temper, Then let's continue to settle the accounts. I asked, What account to settle? She asked, What have you done these days? I emphasized, It's us, okay? She followed suit and said, Then what have we done these days? I was inexplicably embarrassed. I clearly thought that the target was her, but at this moment, facing her questioning, I couldn't even say what it was. What? Her flexible hands became restless. I said, Just the things we would do. She laughed inexplicably. Something flashed through my mind like electricity, staring at her, and said, You are not going to be jealous of yourself, are you? She asked, What do you mean by also? She said indignantly, Am I jealous of that too? Why does she have the right to be jealous of me? I really want to shake her head, to make her sober up. Please, isn't this the same person? Jessica squeezed me and asked, Jonathan, tell me quickly. If I didn't tell her, she would keep asking. I couldn't stand the torture anymore and wailed, Someone take me away. I also want to travel through time.